This podcast is part of the Blueberry Network, where listeners and podcasters come together. Find out more at blueberrywithnoease.com.
The Eat Sleep Right podcast is brought to you by generous grant from the Built on Dreams Media Network, with additional funding by the Sims Media Foundation, and from the generosity of listeners like you.
Stand by, please. Rolling on 6. On 6.
Welcome to episode 122 of the Eat Sleep Right podcast. I'm your host, Adam Scull. The Eat Sleep Right podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at audibletrial.com/Eat Sleep Right. Over 100,000 titles to choose from for your Kindle, iPhone, iPad, or MP3 player. The Eat Sleep Right podcast is available on the site as well as the iTunes store, where you can also subscribe to it. My goal is to find out how writers became authors, how they got where they are, how they do what they do, and go from a blank piece of paper to a finished manuscript. EatSleepRight.net is also made possible by the generous cooperation of Writers World Facebook group. Join the Writers World Facebook group. Learn how to become a better writer. If you enjoy the Eat Sleep Right podcast and you've had your own adventures in writing, I'd like to hear from you. Tell me about yourself and your story, and I may get back to you and have you as a guest on the Eat Sleep Right podcast. If you have any questions or comments, anything at all, I'd like to hear from you. The email address is comments@eatsleepright.net. Michael Hayden, author of A Deal with God, welcome to the Eat Sleep Right podcast.
Thank you. It's great being here.
I want to take a moment to read the description of your book. When Deana Murphy died, she told God she would do anything if he would let her come back. Deana didn't realize what she was getting herself into. God granted her request, but in the form of a deal. This seems to be quite a different twist to writing about the idea of coming back to life. So, what kind of deal?
The deal would be that he would let her come back, but the life that she would take on basically would not be her old life. It would be a completely different life, one that she was not accustomed to, one that was filled with many trials and tribulations and difficulties.
Is it fair to say that her life before she died was one of privilege?
She had graduated college. She did very well in college and got the job of her dreams. So she was footloose, fancy-free, single, 24-year-old girl, great apartment, brand new car. She was doing great.
How did she die?
She was killed by a drunk driver. She was on her way home from work. She was killed by a drunk driver.
The idea of God saying, you want to come back to life, let's make a deal. Very different approach.
I am a youth soccer coach. I've coached over 200 young women, Division I. These are the upper rung young ladies. They have to go through tryouts. They have to be the very best of the best for them to play at my soccer club at the Division I level. Of all the young women that I've ever coached, she was probably the most extraordinary. She had a very difficult upbringing and background. She lived in an orphanage. She had no parents. But when she came onto the soccer field, she was so focused, played at a level of intensity higher than any player that I've ever seen. And I've coached girls that ended up on the Olympic team. I've coached Olympiads. I've coached girls on the Olympic developmental team, girls that are on our national team currently, and girls that play Division I, II, and III college soccer throughout the United States as we speak.
Is it difficult to take faith as a topic and turn it into a book?
Yes, it was very difficult. I had many difficult chapters. I had to write her engagement. I had to write about her wedding, all things that I knew would never take place. Difficult getting through that, especially the wedding. Deana died at a very young age. She had so much aptitude, so much potential. When we were at her funeral, you had to ask the question, what if? What could this girl have accomplished if she was not taken out at the age that she was taken out at. That's what the book is. It's a projection if she would have lived what she could have accomplished. I had to write the wedding of a person that I knew would never have a wedding. The hardest part was in chapter 11, they break up. Part of the mandate is she has to move to Georgia to help a struggling family. A man had lost his wife and he had 3 boys, and he was struggling to raise the 3 boys. So the actual deal isn't really so much the deal with God and Deana. The actual deal is in the first chapter with the mother and wife of the 3 boys and husband that get left behind in chapter 1. Chapter 2, Deana dies. God feels that Deana would be a great replacement for the wife and mother. He even promises the wife and mother, her name is Rebecca, in chapter 1. Rebecca basically asked the same thing when she died. Please don't take me. I will do anything if you send me back. My family will meet its demise without me there taking care of them. God tells her, I can't send you back, but I will send somebody to look after your family. As the book progresses, you realize she wasn't a very good wife or a mother, and you realize why God wanted to make the change. He sends Deana to the family instead. I don't want to give away the end of the book, but you realize why having a higher quality wife and mother changes the future of the family. The theory of God is difficult for so many people because it's not tangible. Basically, I'm asking you to look above and beyond what you can touch and see, and faith that there is a God working. That line's in the book quite a few times. You could see God working to guide people in the right direction to help this family.
I'm not one to use hackneyed expressions, but it's like people leaving the flock.
Good. After 9/11, if you have another catastrophe, then everybody flocks back to God because they want God to help them. Now times are good. Stock market's high. There's prosperity, and that's when people start to leave the flock, so to say.
When did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, when I was a little boy, I read. They made fun of me when I was in school because I was always reading. I would always have a book with me. There was a downtime while the other kids would be playing around, I would be reading.
Do you recall the first story you ever wrote?
Well, it would have been while I was in school.
What was the first book you read that made you decide, I want to be a writer?
I loved Jack and the Beanstalk. There's this magic vine, and you could change planes, and once you got to the top of the beanstalk, everything would be different, being able to change destiny.
Changing one's destiny. Was that the overriding factor that drove you to write this book?
After I suffered the loss, when she passed away, you're devastated, and you're grieving, and you're mourning, and then you just kind of start grasping at straws. The deal with God is the only way I could see of her coming back.
How long did it take you to write the book?
1 year.
Am I incorrect by stating that seems like a long time?
Oh, the research was only 3 months. I went back to her orphanage. I went to emergency rooms. I went to the car dealership, talked to attorneys, insurance people. I went to the place in Georgia that she moved to, went to where the houses were, to her church, the duplex, the beach, where she worked. I went to emergency and trauma centers to see what she would have had to endure. I bought breakfast to a physical therapist, and I spent about 2 hours going through all the physical therapy that's in chapter 3. That book is heavily researched and extremely accurate.
A massive undertaking to write about someone's life that didn't have that life.
There would be a problem if another 9/11 took place in 2017, because there would be no recollection of it in the book. So there is a little bit of a gamble on the projection. I'm projecting that in the next 8 years, things are pretty mellow, current events-wise.
What was the hardest part about writing your book? The beginning, middle, or end?
The middle, because she makes a deal with God that she's going to give up her life in Tampa, move to rural, backwoods Georgia, help this family. God basically tells her that he wants her to marry the father. At that point, she had just died. She was willing to agree to anything, mostly from her talking to the boys, that Rebecca, the original wife and mom, wasn't a great mom, and she was really a horrible wife. So this man is coming off of the worst marriage ever. His wife passes away. He's kind of enjoying the single life, so to say. not having her around and being henpecked, and he's in no rush whatsoever to remarry. God said, yeah, go marry this guy and take care of his family. And she's like, okay. And she gets there. He's a nice guy. They get along great. They're dating. She's trying to take it easy, trying to get him to propose, and they finally do get engaged. He kind of freaks out, and he breaks up with her. He breaks the engagement. That was the toughest part, how devastated she was and how heartbroken she was that he did that to her.
Do you outline, or do you write by the seat of your pants?
I outline.
Heavily?
Yes.
Why is it important for you to outline?
I had a spiral notebook that was over an inch thick, and I wrote the storyline, each chapter, chapter by chapter, what I wanted to do in every chapter. So that when I was done with that, all I had to do was the dialogue. But the dialogue's tricky. When I wrote the book, I had the whole story. But then after you have the whole story, you have to go back and rewrite the dialogue into it. I wrote the book first with very little dialogue, and then when I rewrote it, then I had to add the dialogue into it as I was writing.
You said it was tricky. Why was the dialogue tricky?
I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted all dialogue to sound actual, real, heartfelt, on the money. I didn't want screwy, hokey BS. I wanted solid character development, the dialogue to be real. The editor helped me with that. The dialogue and character development is one of the strong points of the book.
Was this your first book?
Yes.
Tell me about the joy of writing for you.
Oh, I don't know if joy is the right word. I wrote the book almost out of necessity. I had told the parents at the soccer club that I would do it, so I was kind of on the hook. We did not realize a bulk of her biography because she was an orphan. We had this girl that we were coaching, great player, great kid. We got her a scholarship to college. Everything was wonderful. Then she passed away. The proprietors of the orphanage were not really supposed to talk about this, but did you know that Deana Murphy was the girl that was in the 1999 case against Richard Cayley that got put away? She was involved in one of the most, maybe the largest court case in Tampa Bay history. All the foster care laws in the state of Florida were practically changed because of that one girl. So now we're sitting there with what's turning into a really great story. I write all the press releases at the soccer club, so everybody knows I'm the one that does all the writing for everything. And they're like, you have to write a book, you have to tell the story. This just kind of blossomed and ballooned up and mushroomed and took a life of its own. So I kind of ditched the nonfiction part of it, writing about 5 different girls, and I just did the Deana Murphy story. And like I said earlier, I did like Titanic. I took a sad actual event and wrapped a fictional storyline around it with her aptitude, and that worked out. I was very happy with it because I had started to write the other book, and it was horrible. I hated it. I completely stopped.
Until all of this happened, you had no intention of becoming a writer.
No, I still might not. This might be the only book I ever write.
This book sure shows one thing that you have going for you. When you dive into something, you go full tilt boogie.
Yes.
Who's your favorite author?
My favorite author is Mark Twain. I like the way that his books have a mix of fantasy and reality. I like the way he blends fantasy and reality.
Words of wisdom for aspiring authors.
Whoa. Have a lot of money in the bank before you start. Don't go into it broke.
What was the nicest thing anybody ever said about your book?
It was the best book they ever read.
Did they say why?
There's a huge pro-family message. She could have gone to Georgia and she could have started a business, but she wouldn't have been able to raise the boys. She took a job as a waitress, so she only had to work a couple hours at night. And those couple hours at night she was working at the restaurant. Her husband was home with the boys, so she sacrificed her whole career so that she could raise 3 boys that weren't even her own.
You write the book, then go back and add in the dialogue, which calls for heavy revisions at times. So, revisions, love them or hate them?
In the beginning, I hated it. But when I got the actual copy of the book in my hand and I read it and we realized what was done, why it was done, I appreciate the process now.
Why did you hate it so much?
When I wrote something, there was a reason why I wrote it. And I thought it worked well with the story. But sometimes you have to pull yourself away from your own perspective and look at somebody else's perspective. And then a lot of times if you weigh the two in the long run, you can see why the second perspective had merit. And many times was even superior.
Where can we find out more about you and your book on the internet?
Well, we're published through CreateSpace, which is owned by Amazon. So we work with Kindle Select, Kindle Direct, Kindle Unlimited.
Michael Hayden, author of A Deal with God, a spiritual fiction novel inspired by a true story and a real event. Thank you so much for being with me today on the Eat, Sleep, Write podcast.
Thank you. Great talking with you and working with you, and I had a great time with this.
If you're looking for a community that can offer you tools, support, and advice to start your own adventures in writing, then prepare to have the cauldron of your imagination stirred. I started the Eat, Sleep, Write podcast so more people can understand what it's like to be a writer and to get more eyes on your books. My goal is to help you achieve the success you so richly deserve. I salute your success in writing.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Eat, Sleep, Write podcast, located at eatsleepwrite.net. Please send any questions, comments or suggestions to comments@eatsleepwrite.net. Please consider a donation to support the Eat, Sleep, Write podcast. Donations can be sent to our PayPal address at donations@eatsleepwrite.net. Once in a lifetime, the theme music for the Eat, Sleep, Write podcast, courtesy of Stephen Paul, all rights reserved, used by permission. Please join us again for the next edition of the Eat, Sleep, Write podcast.